Hello and welcome to everybody who's watching. Thank you for joining us again.
Our topic for today is marriage, authored and designed by God.
When we talk about marriage being authored and designed by God, we get that from the Bible. And the first hint we get in the Bible that God authored and designed marriage is in the book of Genesis. And we're going to start reading Genesis chapter 1. We're going to read verse 26 to verse 28.
And it says, "And God said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth over the earth."
So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female created he them.
And God blessed them, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth.
When we read this passage, we realize that when God created human beings, he told them to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. So God intended for the earth to be filled, but it seems like he intended to grow organically. So he created a man and a woman, and he wanted the earth filled. But males on their own are unable to procreate. So are women unable to procreate on their own. So in the very design of males and females, they were supposed to come together to be able to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. So that was in the mind of the designer, the coming together of the two. So it's in the design of human beings. It's not an afterthought. God did not think later on, man, this guy needs a woman, or man, this woman needs a man. Or human beings did not realize, maybe we should procreate. That's not what happened. So this coming together of the two is not a human construct. It's not a product of evolution, because if it was a product of evolution, then probably by the third, fourth generation, they would have then decided, we should come together. And yet by that time, the human race would have been dead, because men on their own and women on their own can't procreate. So for them to be able to have children, they needed to be able to come together. So they did not have the luxury of time and evolving to be able to come together as males and females. So we see here that the coming together of males and females was part of God's original intention. He designed it. But in chapter 2 of Genesis, we see God creating now the relationship that was going to house the coming together of males and females.
In the Bible, it tells a beautiful story of how God created Adam, and from Adam he took a rib, closed up the flesh, and he created the first woman.
And I'm not sure if Adam was consulted about his rib, but I suppose it was not a big deal. He himself belonged to God. So by extension, I suppose his rib belonged to God too.
And that is for sure. And many preachers always talk about this, and I really enjoy, when God presented Eve to Adam, his very first words, which I'm sure were inspired, when he said, "This is bone of my bones. This is flesh of my flesh.
She shall be called woman, for she came out of man."
Oh, yes.
Now, this relationship is, in fact, between Adam and Eve, is not really the first relationship we see in the Bible.
No, it's not. It's actually the second. The first relationship that we see was actually between God and man.
Yes.
When God created man, that was the first relationship that existed. And then after God presented Adam to Eve. Eve to Adam. Yes. That's where we find our first human to human relationship.
Adam, his first relationship was with God. Same applies with Eve. First relationship was with God. But this one is the first human to human relationship. Which unlike what happens to us today, our first human to human relationship is with our mothers. When we are first in the mother's womb, when we are born, when we are breastfed. So our first human to human relationship for us is mother and child. But in the Garden of Eden, that first human to human relationship was marriage. That shows how important it was. God created this as the first as the first relationship. That it was not friendship, it was not relatives, it was marriage. And God designed for this marriage to be like a foundation.
And on that foundation is built the family. And from the family, we have communities. And from the communities, then we have our society.
We have the entire human race built on this one foundation, which is the family. So it was authored, it was designed by God. It's not something that human beings came out of. It's not a human idea. We didn't say one day we should do it. So we affirm that marriage was authored and designed by God.
And it was so important that even we have civil laws that were created to protect it.
Yes.
Because it's in our best interest.
It is. And funny enough, not just for people who are religious, even people who are not religious, there's this desire to be with one person, this desire to share your life with somebody. Even if you decide, I don't want to get married, but the idea of sharing your life with somebody else seems to be inbuilt. Of course, there are some people who are just not interested, but the overwhelming majority of us want. Yeah, for the most part, we want to get married. We want to share our lives with other people. It was built into the nature of human beings, the nature of men, the nature of women. Now, in the design of marriage, God designed for a few things to be built in there. We're not going to talk about everything, but in the design, God designed that these two should become one.
And when we say two becoming one, we do not mean that two different people lose their identities and become merged into one person.
No, they don't become one person. Interestingly, the Bible says, and the two shall become one. It doesn't say one what. We usually insert the one what. Now we believe that it is one unit. The two become one unit. And we like to think about it in terms of a team. A team is one team, but different people play different roles within the team. So these two, and it's important that in the team, you maintain your individuality. I mean, we expect the goalkeeper to be a good goalkeeper, but we don't expect the guy striking to be touching the ball with his hand. It's like, what are you doing? So we expect the different people in the team to excel in their roles within the team so that the one team can succeed.
Each person bringing what they are good at, bringing their strengths to the relationship to make it work.
So we believe God created marriage and intended for the two to become one. Very interesting mathematics. The two shall become one. And sometimes when you look at it in the context of the team, then you realize you don't need to merge anything. It's just the coming together. It's two people who form a unity. They become united. So it's two individuals
working together.
Yes. Now, the interesting thing about individuals is that God created us with unique fingerprints. And every human being is unique, different from anybody else. Now, imagine when two unique human beings come together. They naturally form a unique relationship.
Yeah, there are no two marriages nor two relationships that are identical.
No, they're not. As a result, there are many ways in which a couple could succeed, many ways in which a marriage could exist and be happy. You can't prescribe and say, this is how you will be happy. Even within the Christian faith, no two marriages are the same. There are certain things that may be similar, but no two marriages are the same, which means that every couple has the capacity to make a successful marriage, even though that marriage will be different from every other marriage that they know. Similar characteristics, yes, but they can make it succeed. So you don't have to be a replica of any other marriage. You do not have to be a carbon copy of a marriage that you like, because you are not anything like the two people in that marriage. You are two unique individuals who are forming a unique marriage. And marriage is also a unity of mind, body, and soul, in the sense that two minds work towards a common goal. Two bodies are here in the marriage. Different, but two bodies are here, and they have a unity of purpose in how they use their bodies and how they do not use their bodies. And same applies when it comes to the whole person. We hopefully want to go to the same place. We hopefully want to end up in eternity together. So this marriage is just a unity of two individuals who have chosen, you know what, let's do this thing together. That's one of the characteristics of marriage, oneness.
Another characteristic that is very essential to keep a marriage together is that of faithfulness. Commitment to each other is very important.
True.
And in the confines of that commitment, we are free to be vulnerable and to be able to express ourselves freely, knowing that in this marriage, it's like a safe place.
True. And when you see in the book of Genesis, when God creates Adam and Eve, he gives Adam one wife and gives Eve one husband. There's no side chick or side guy, it's just them two. So it was designed for them to have each other and be committed to one another. Of course, after we sin, sin comes into the world, we see a different picture. We see polygamy coming in, which was not there in the Garden of Eden. We also see adultery coming in, which was not there in the Garden of Eden. But the original intent was for these two to be faithful to one another and be committed to one another. And that idea of faithfulness and commitment still persists even today. It has not changed just because we find ourselves in a sinful world. The next characteristic is heterosexuality. The marriage, the design and the intention for them to be fruitful and multiply required that these two be heterosexual.
Yes, we need those two, the different components.
We need the different components. So you see the first marriage in the Garden of Eden as a heterosexual marriage. It's male and female, and they're instructed to be fruitful and multiply. So that's part of the blueprint. It is only after sin enters into the world that we see different sexual orientations.
Yes, for example, like bisexuality, homosexuality,
asexuality.
Yes.
So we see the different sexual orientations or sexualities emerge after the fall of man, after the entrance of sin. But the original intention of marriage was for this to be a relationship between people who are heterosexual. That is the only way they're going to be able to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it.
Another factor that we need to consider when it comes to marriage is that of permanence.
Yes.
What God has put together, let no man put asunder, and that can be found in Matthew 19 verse 6.
This is what Jesus said when he was talking about marriage. He said that they were created together. When God created them, he created them and said that a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Then he says, what God has put together, let no man put asunder. So it was intended to be permanent. It was intended to be something that is going to last for a lifetime. But it's when we see sin, after the entrance of sin, that's when we see abuse, we see adultery, we then see the possibility and sometimes the reality of people divorcing, walking away from, and marriage is not being permanent. But the original intention we get from the mouth of Jesus himself, that the original intention was for it to be permanent.
And marriages are also to be sacred, something that is holy, something that we should preserve and to see as something that is blessed, given from God.
True. And in fact, in Genesis chapter 1, before God speaks to Adam and Eve, the Bible says he creates them, and then he says, and God blessed them. He blessed them. So there they are. He blesses them and then says to them, be fruitful and multiply. Now, when you read verse 28, you realize that he says this to both of them. So it could not have been at the point when Adam was alone. It had to be when Adam was there and Eve was there. And it reads, when you read the whole story, you get a sense that Eve must have been presented to God, to Adam by God. And then as she's presented to Adam, and Adam bursts into poetry, then God says to them, now this is where we get the idea that God performed the first marriage, because he's speaking to both of them now. He blesses them. I'm not sure how he did that, but he blesses them. I'm not sure if he pronounced a blessing on them or whatever the case may be, but he blesses them and then says to both of them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion. Now imagine if that was actually part of the wedding service.
Wow, I've never thought of it that way before.
Because it says it to both of them. So he blesses them. So the idea that we are blessed as human beings, that we are blessed as couples in our marriages, flows from the Garden of Eden itself. God blessed them and then said to them. So that's part of what marriage was designed to be like when God decided, let's make marriage.
I think it's very important that we reflect on the idea of marriage being sacred, meaning it's holy. And I think if we were to really take that seriously, we'll be very careful of the way we think about marriage and the way we act as a person who is married. It will be something that we hold sacred, meaning that we cherish it, we treasure it,
Yes.
and put it as something in our mind that's a priority, that governs the way we speak, the way we think, and the way that we act.
The holiness of marriage comes from how God designed it and the fact that God blessed it. And so, but we don't always think of the marriage as holy.
I don't think we do.
Because I suppose that may be because when you look at the spouse, you may feel the spouse is not holy. What this one is doing is not holy. There's no way I'm treating this one like they are holy. And you may even feel that I don't think I'm holy myself. But the relationship is sacred. The coming together of the two is sacred. So God created it and He blessed it. And it is a sacred union and has to be treated with the same reverence that comes with everything else that is sacred, that is holy. Now that's the design that comes out of the mind of God. Those components we just spoke about, the oneness that is supposed to be there between man and woman, the faithfulness. The sexuality, with the heterosexuality of marriage, the permanence and the sacredness of marriage. All of those are part of the design. Then came sin. When sin entered into the world, then the ideal was not always possible. In fact, because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, marriages generally fell in the category of things that have fallen short of the glory of God. And we found that we now have to learn from mistakes. We'll have to learn how to make the marriage a success, how to make the marriage better. And part of the things that are important in making marriage success is to deal with the negative things that are there in marriage and just eliminate them. And secondly, come up with ways in which the marriage can succeed. And that's what we're going to talk about briefly. And then that'll be it for tonight. So the first thing we're going to talk is about how you can eliminate negative patterns of communication.
Some of the negatives that flow from our communication is based on the bitterness that we are holding onto into our hearts.
And sometimes that comes through in the way we talk to one another. You know, when we offend one another and we do things to one another, and naturally when two people live together, when two people are married and they're sharing a life together, they will do things that will hurt the other person. It just comes with the territory. And it's important that we learn to forgive, but there are times when we don't forgive and these things build up. And we end up, and that bitterness that's in the heart,
which I think is generated by pain.
Yes, it comes through in the communication. And the things we say, it could be a comment that could be cutting. It could be a comment that just is hurtful, that may have been unnecessary. And the other person may not even care necessarily about how it lands to the other person. So that bitterness that's in our heart, when it comes through in the way we speak to one another, that just messes up the relationship. It makes it unpleasant to be in, and people feel, you know what, I don't want to be in this thing. I don't want to be in this thing.
And from that bitterness also, we can have contempt, which is more like looking down on someone, and it comes through by the way that they speak, also born out of pain.
And you can tell when someone is speaking down to you. Sometimes they talk to you as if you're a child or you're an idiot, you know, or they just choose not to consult you. And sometimes it's even the facial expression, the body language says,
yes,
you're nothing.
You're nothing, yeah.
And it's just, it messes up the relationship itself. So these are some of the negative things that in marriage we should try to avoid, because the experts in marriage have actually discovered that the ways we talk to one another can really break the relationship down.
Yes. Another thing that comes through that are negative when it comes to communicating with someone is when we put someone down, when the things that we say makes a person feels as if in your eyes you do not matter. When you put someone down, give me some examples, baby.
you know, it happens when you talk to the other person and you say to them, I'd like to do this. And what makes you think that you can succeed in this?
Okay. Yes. So you're breaking out the person's self-esteem.
Man, it's gone. When the other person doesn't think you can get the job, you're applying for a job and the other one is not convinced you'll get it. I don't think you're gonna be good at this. I'm going to sing. Nah, I don't think you sing well. I'm going to speak. What you speak. I'm gonna start a business. From where? What do you know about a business? So you find that there is nothing that's good that the other person seems to see in you. All they see are the things that you can't do.
And it is so surprising that when the person who is closest to you does not see the value in who you are and what you can do, it actually stops you as an individual from reaching your potential, from trying something new, from realizing your dreams and your goals. The thoughts and feelings of one's spouse is so very important. And I think sometimes we do not understand how powerful the things that we say, how it can really stop a person from achieving and from becoming the best that they can be.
Some people may have the potential to be great, but they're put down so often that they just don't pursue it. And we are left with an unrealized and unfulfilled potential. That's because they're being put down.
Another thing that, besides being bitter and speaking and having what you're saying pregnant with contempt, there's also the lack of communication.
Yes. Now, there's the obvious one of silent treatment. When someone just doesn't talk.
And we women, we are very good at that.
There's the obvious one of silent treatment, and yes, but there's the less obvious one where things happen, and you find out that things have happened. You find out that things are happening. You were not consulted. It was not discussed with you. It's as if you are a spectator here in this marriage or in this family. Things are just happening. That can make you feel, I don't want to be here. I'm not valued here. That there's no place for me here. So it's these are the negatives that we have to try and work on. So if you're identifying any of these patterns in your marriage, try to work on it. Try to work on it. Now you may be asking, how am I going to work on that? We'll deal with that later. But now, if you're identifying these things in your marriage, don't rest on the fact that I have a reason to be bitter. I have a reason to treat them with contempt. I have a reason to put them down. I'm actually correct. There's some people who say, of course, I'm not putting them down. I'm telling them the truth. What do they know about business? Okay, fine. And someone can say, I'm hurt. I have a reason why I don't communicate. I have a reason for silent treatment. But the thing is this, if this is happening in your marriage, it's going to mess it up. If it hasn't already messed it up. And so your marriage has the capacity to blossom. Yes. And be a great relationship, but these things will stop your marriage from being what it could be. Now, the second negative thing that we have to deal with is making differences problems. Sometimes people feel that the fact that we're different, that's a problem, and we fight to try and get the other person to be like you, to think like you, to operate like you, to do things like you. No, in life we are different. Husband and wife, we're different, two different individuals. And the attitude towards those differences can mess you up.
So it's important for us to be able to recognize our differences, but accept them. It can be a blessing to the marriage. Yes. If you are not the same. Yes. You'll be bringing different talents and different strengths, which can benefit the couple.
True. You don't need an oversupply of everything in your marriage. For example, if one of you is punctual, you don't necessarily need two people who are punctual. There's nothing bad with being punctual. It's just that you don't have an oversupply. The marriage already has someone who's punctual. So if one of you is a saver, you don't necessarily need both of you to be savers. There are benefits to saving and there are benefits to spending as well. So the fact that your spouse is a spender, your spouse is a saver, shouldn't cause you stress. Why? Because once you're able to leverage those two, you'll find that you can go far as a couple.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of just finding a balance where both being a saver or being a spender, they're able to somehow find a middle ground so that it doesn't disadvantage the marriage.
Yes. Same applies with when one is an introvert and the other one is an extrovert. You don't have to change your spouse and make them an extrovert. And if you're antisocial, leave them. Or the other person may feel you're just too much of a social butterfly. Your spouse does not have to be like you for the marriage to succeed. But if your attitude towards differences is that differences are a problem, you should try to be the same you are going to have problems for as long as you have that attitude. And that attitude has the capacity to destroy the marriage.
I think that if it's possible, we should go beyond just accepting our differences, but put out an effort to appreciate the differences that exist.
That is true. And to appreciate doesn't have to be something mental and internal in your heart. I appreciate it. Say it to your spouse.
Yes, it has to be verbalized.
Yes, it has to be verbalized. The other person must know that you are different and it has its pluses, so that they themselves can feel comfortable in who they are. Because if your attitude towards differences is that it's a problem, or you appreciate it quietly without mentioning it, after a while, the other person may feel that it's something wrong that they should try and get rid of in the marriage. And that's not great, because they will try to be less of who they are to try and please you. No, you want the fullness of the person. When God created this person, God designed this person so that they can bring something to the world. What you want is the full benefit of the person that God has created. So appreciate it verbally. Let the other person know that you appreciate the differences that you have. The other negative thing that we have to deal with is negative attitudes towards your marriage. You know, when we have negative thoughts about this marriage, by negative thoughts I mean you sit and in your mind you tell yourself that I'm unhappy in this marriage. This marriage is not working out. This thing is going to collapse. You know, the thoughts you think about your marriage affect your mood.
And that is true. The things that you focus and you think about, somehow they manifest themselves into reality. So we need to take great care to make sure that we keep on thinking positively, even though things may not be the way you want them to be right now. But if you continue to tell yourself that, okay, this is a problem, but you start to work on it and try to find ways, creative ways to solve the different challenges that you're having, it starts in the mind.
True.
And over time, if you keep on being positive and finding creative ways of dealing with your challenges, you can overcome them.
So your mood as you come into the house, before you even say the first word to the other person, your mood is influenced by your thoughts. So be careful about the way you think about your marriage. Even if you say it's private, I'm not saying anything. Those thoughts influence your mood. It is the mood that will influence speech and behavior. Now you may be saying, what do I do when I'm really in a bad mood? That's why we have music.
Exactly. And that works like a charm.
Yes, that's why we have music. Get yourself a pick-me-up playlist. And then you play that thing and it sorts out your mood. So you may be coming out of the office feeling, I've had a horrible day today. Get yourself a playlist you can listen to when you are going home so that your mood can be lifted. Our mood determines our conversation and our behavior. You can come in and a hello, just the word hello, could either be a hello or hello. Just a hello itself, sets the tone when you come home or when you interact with your spouse. So it's important. Our thoughts influence our mood, and our moods influence our speech and behavior. So whatever you think about your marriage, it will come through in the way you speak. It'll come through in your choice of words. It'll also come through in
your actions.
So invest in positive thoughts about your marriage. Those positive thoughts will produce a positive mood. That positive mood will produce positive speech and positive behavior. So those are the negatives that we have to deal with in our marriage. Now, in trying to make this marriage a great thing, the first thing I would say is decide to have a good marriage.
Yes.
Decide it. Not going to happen on its own. It doesn't happen automatically. You must decide, I'm going to enjoy my marriage. I'm going to have a great marriage and I'm going to enjoy it. And the first thing we would present is to say, in deciding to have a great marriage, practice your 1 Corinthians 13 love.
Oh yes, the Bible gives us very good advice.
Yes.
It teaches us that love is patient.
Love is kind. It keeps no records of wrongs.
Oh, I know you like that one. Yeah, it's not boastful.
It's not puffed up.
It's long-suffering.
Yes, long-suffering. Yes, babe. Long-suffering. Because patient doesn't quite capture it, Patient means it's like waiting for, but long-suffering suggests that there's suffering here.
And it's long.
And it's long. Yes. So practice it.
Yeah.
It's one thing to read it. It's another thing to preach on it. But to practice it is quite a bit.
We have to be intentional also in our actions.
Yes. And in practicing it, you will find that the quality of the relationship improves because it has a knock-on effect. When someone is treated with a love that is 1 Corinthians 13 kind, it feels good. Even the people who are messing up tend to try and change their behavior because the environment that is created by this 1 Corinthians 13 love is great.
And it is true, it says love begets love.
Yes.
So if you're being treated in a way that is kind and courteous, naturally over time, you will also have that same impulse to react in the same way.
True. That's number one. Practice this 1 Corinthians 13 love. Secondly, be an active listener. You don't have to agree, but just be an active listener. Now, listening is just a field of study. People have studied listening on its own.
And they say that it is a skill that is developed over time.
Yes, it is. And you need that skill in marriage.
You do.
You need it. Because active listening is not just listening. Because sometimes you can listen. You know, there are times when you listen and you're on the phone, but you are listening and the other person feels
that
no,
this man is not listening to me. Yes.
Why this man now?
It's just an example.
You're on your phone, minding your own business.
And they're talking. They're not giving you any eye contact.
But you are listening.
They're not, showing that they're understanding. They're not.
But they're understanding.
Yes, but we're talking about active listening here. And with active listening, it means that the person who is speaking, that you're supposed to look at them. And you're supposed to give some indication that you're following and you're understanding.
Even though you are not listening with your eyes, because you don't really need the eyes to listen. But I'm just saying that
we are talking about active listening.
Yes.
So for active listening to take place, you cannot have the person there speaking to you.
Are you talking about
and
me?
you are no.
Baby, you're pointing.
I'm speaking in general.
Okay, fine. You can't have the person. Okay, let's point at them. You can't have the person who is listening
be on their phones or looking, doing something else.
But when you're driving, of course you have to pay attention to the road.
I know, but you can give cues with your voice to say, to make sure the person understands that you're following. Or you can ask questions for clarity, just make sure that you and the person who is speaking are on the same page.
So the whole concept of active listening is for the person who's speaking to feel
that they're being listened to.
Not that they're not being listened to. They just need to feel that I'm being listened to. They need to see it with your eyes and the nods.
Yes.
They need to hear it with the and the
and the questions.
But what if you don't want to disturb the person is on the roll? They're talking and you feel that the is gonna mess them up. Why can't you just mind your own business while they talk?
No.
And they do that. That's not active listening.
No, we want your attention.
Not we, man. When you say we,
okay,
it's important.
The speaker needs the attention of the listener.
Yes. So the second part is this: when the person talks to you, there's a need for them to feel listened to. So sometimes the listener can say, "But I am listening." That's listening. But active listening is about giving the other person an indication that I am listening. Now the thing is this: someone can misconstrue the nodding to mean you are agreeing.
That is very true.
So I'm not sure, maybe nodding may not always, especially when you are not agreeing,
And the word okay, it can be very ambiguous.
True, yeah. Oh yes. So you must find a way that's not going to get you into trouble, but just communicate to the other person that you are hearing them. Even if you end up rephrase, so is this what you're saying? Yeah. Oh, okay. But listen. But even when you feel the other person is on a roll, and they're telling you about their day, there are times when you step into the room or in the car, and the other person, you ask, who is that? And of course you are looking for a short answer. That is so and so. And then the other person, doesn't matter.
You see the finger.
Okay, fine. And the other person starts giving you background. You remember last year, you were hoping for a just quick. That is Patricia.
So another aspect of active listening is patience. You need to sit and allow the person who is speaking to adequately express themselves in the way that they desire to.
Even though the answer you need could have been a 3-seconder, and the person chooses to take you on a 45-minute detour to give you context.
Okay, please note that with women, we have our quota of words that we need to complete in any given day. So please, we are asking men to please be patient with us
As
and
you give
allow
background.
us, yes, to express ourselves to the full extent, and so we can finish our quota of words for each day.
True, that is an important thing. But I also think that it's important that we discuss. I remember we discussed, and I said to Aevia, you know, I don't have a problem with the 45 thing, but can we start with the headlines? This is Patricia, and then give the background. I can't be waiting in suspense, you know, for 45 minutes to eventually be told, oh, that's Patricia.
We want your attention.
You get the attention, but headlines, baby, headlines first. You know, that's it. It's part of it. So as the other person listens, if they're the kind of person who asks, "Who is this?" it would help to say headline. This is Patricia. She started working here today. Then remember last year. You know that then it works. So active listening is the other person feeling listened to. But please do not
Weary.
do not weary the listener. Do not weary the listener. Help the listener to follow along. And those who need headlines like me, give them the headlines and then go for the rest of the bulletin. So that's the first one, practice First Corinthians love. And the second one, become an active listener.
Learn to become an active.
Yes, learn to become an active listener. And the third one, and the next one is choose to forgive. And you're going to do that for a lifetime.
Yes. It's not always going to be easy, because sometimes, you know, when the person that you love most can at the same time hurt you most.
True.
So we should never tire. You know, the Bible says what? We must forgive each other
7 times.
7 times.
But you know what I think? Peter asked Jesus, how often should I forgive my brother when he sins against me? 7 times? Jesus says, no, not 7 times, up to 70 times 7. I think if Peter had asked, how often should one forgive their spouse? 7 times? Jesus would have said, whoa, up to 70 times 7 every day.
Every day.
Because man, there are many small infractions, you know. Sometimes you intended it, sometimes you didn't, sometimes you are retaliating, sometimes it's a small war, a microaggression. Man, we need that 70 times 7 every day.
You know, I always try to imagine, man, if I were to forgive somebody of one thing 49 times in one day, how would I manage?
Baby, 490.
Is 490? You
Yeah,
see, my math is even
7.
off.
It's a lot. 490. You'd simply say, you know, it would feel like a credit card, you know. It's like you swipe my 490 for the day, and then you mess up. You're like, that's 23, you know. And but for your marriage to succeed, you're gonna need to forgive, because you live with this person. Your lives are so intertwined that the opportunity to hurt and to offend and to forget and to bruise are so often. There are so many that you just have to forgive one another. You must come with the approach that you're going to forgive one another, and you're going to do this for a lifetime. There will not come a time when your spouse will not be a sinner, where they will be perfect, and you will not need to forgive them. So the third thing you need to have a great marriage is an attitude of forgiveness. Choose to forgive. Now, Pastor Nechiflane has an interesting concept of forgiveness. He says that forgiveness is something that you give before it is asked for. You give it.
Okay.
And so he says you forgive somebody before they even ask for forgiveness. Why? Because you want to give them this forgiveness, this pardon. You want to give them so that your heart does not have any bitterness. He says you don't want to have bitterness, because if you're going to wait for the other person to come and ask for forgiveness, while you wait, your heart is full of bitterness, it's full of anger, it's full of hurt. But if you decide on your own, I will give you this pardon before you ask for it, he says, then you are able to forget, to get peace of mind before the other one chooses to give it to you by saying, I'm sorry. So his concept of forgive and forget is give pardon before it is asked for, so that you can get peace of mind before the other one gives it to you by asking for forgiveness. So it's a brilliant thing, because it affects then the mood, which will affect it affects the thoughts, that will affect the mood, the speech, and the behavior. So choose to embrace the concept of forgiveness in the marriage, because forgiving one another is a necessity it's a necessity of marriage. It's a necessary attitude and approach to life that you will need to make your marriage a success.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It is. I thought you did a great job with that.
Yeah.
You did a great job with that. And the last one we're going to talk about today is cherishing one another.
Yeah.
And that includes caring for one another. Practically, in ways that the other person likes also. We care for one another. And sometimes we think about it in terms of just the monetary responsibilities. But there are other ways in which we care about each other's feelings.
Yes.
About each other's priorities. And we improve the quality of each other's lives. We remain young and attractive in each other's eyes. We come home to a place where that feels safe to us. And we protect one another as well. We protect one another emotionally.
Yeah, and another way I think that is important that we protect each other is also from the hurt that other people may want to cause. For example, when it comes to like our in-laws,
yes,
it feels so good when your spouse stands up for you, speaks for you, defends you. That is a very important way of protecting one another.
That is true. We do so. And we also protect one another from the hurt that comes with the possibility that you could be competing with somebody else for your spouse's affection. Because that could be very hurtful. So that's part of the protecting. So we do care for one another, we do protect one another, and we treat each other with respect. And that's very important, treating each other with respect. And sometimes we think of this exclusively in the space of submission, but this is not. Respect and submission are two different things. Respecting the other person does not require that you be a man or that you be a husband. It just requires that you be a human being. And every human being wants to be treated with respect. Whether you're at work, whether you're out in the street, whether you're at home, everybody wants to be treated with respect. And it is great when you're treated with that respect by your own spouse. You know, the things you say, the things you do, they're handled with respect. Even a disagreement, they disagree with you in a respectful way. We feel cherished when we are treated like that.
Another way of actually cherishing each other is by showing gratitude to our spouse. It is always good to hear complimentary things that even flatter, that will flatter you from your spouse. And it's a way of cherishing them because it is something that we all need or we all desire. And it's not always good to be able to get that from people who are outside of the marriage. So another way to cherish your spouse, let them feel special and feel loved, is by showing them gratitude.
Be grateful for the little things, and even the things we feel are routine. You know, sometimes we don't express gratitude for the things we feel this is your job. If you feel it's your job, if you feel it's your spouse's job to pay the bond, you will never express gratitude. And you may probably even say, but why should I say thank you? You also live here. It feels good. Express that gratitude. You can feel it's your spouse's job to cook,
which is daily, but still we need to daily say thank you, even if you don't like the food or it may not taste as good as other times. But the effort, the time that was put into preparing should be acknowledged. So we should always express our gratitude daily.
Baby, I felt the energy of the daily. Daily.
Baby, I'll speak it in general.
All right, yes. So express, even though you may feel that it's your spouse's job to cook, appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's your spouse's job to make the bed, appreciate it. It's your spouse's job to take the child to school, appreciate it. These things that we do, yes, it could be my responsibility. Yes, it could be part of what I do because they are my children as well. I also slept here. I also live in this house. But when someone expresses that appreciation, expresses their gratitude for you playing your role, it does a lot for marriage. Now, this idea that I should not be saying thank you to you for you doing your great job, it's not a wow thing. You're supposed to do it. Yeah, you can say that. but it's going to affect the quality of your marriage.
Yes.
If you want to improve it, learn to appreciate and be grateful for the things, even the things that are the other person's job. I mean, out there are people, there are husbands and wives who disappear on a Friday and resurface on a Monday. And guess what? It would be nice to tell your wife, I'm glad you're always here. You don't disappear on a Friday and resurface on a Monday. That is very true.
It reinforces the good.
Yes. So do not assume that just because it's obvious, just because the other person should be doing it, that there's no need for you to express gratitude and just reserve the gratitude for the special occasions. No. Be grateful for the little things. That gratitude also gives birth to the special occasions. And when those special occasions come, be grateful for those as well. So that's all we have time for today. And we hope that what we've shared with you today is going to benefit your marriage. We hope that what we've shared with you today is will help you understand that when God authored and designed marriage, it was something that was supposed to be a blessing to us. And we hope that what we've shared today can help improve your marriage. And if not yours, the marriage of someone you know, someone you are close to, so you can share some of the things we spoke about today. So thank you very much for joining us, and may God richly bless you.